Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another Saturday show with Steve Dickson. And after last week's show, I think we're probably going to calm it down a little, so there won't be too much agog and aghast or references to each other's preferences. So, Steve, lovely to see you again, mate.
Did Ofcom intervene, Chris? Was there an intervention during the week?
There was a couple, mate. It was the most liveliest of feedbacks that I've received for a long time, Steve. But people seem to have enjoyed it. They enjoyed the passion.
I'm glad the show is getting the attention. I'm glad the show is getting the attention that it deserves.
Yeah. One person said that the energy would have taken a Tesla for double its normal amount of mileage. So
supercharged.
Yeah, supercharged. Not a bad thing, mate. Anyhow, listen, it was lovely to see you. Lovely to see you during a week and travel and everything. So nice to be back on a plane. And it's good. And it's nice to see how people, how people conduct themselves. So, it was really, really good.
Yeah, it was. I have to say, the morning after the night before, Chris. It's always a troublesome one. But it was great to put into practice in person some of what we've been speaking about for a while. So, sorry, I've got a rotter of a fly trying to chase me here. Joe Biden had a cicada, and I have a blue bottle. That's just how it goes. You should see there quite vividly. This fly is not giving up. Anyway, yeah, absolutely. It was great to see you, and let's do it again very soon.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right, so now, what to have a little chat about today. So one of the things that I think is so important, and it seems to be gaining a little bit of momentum, is organisations now that are putting aside some funds and investing and building up a little bank and supporting emerging companies that are going to hopefully have a big impact or influence on the future of travel. So people are really, really going for innovation now. So, and also obviously net zero emissions by 2050. But I think it's a great thing, Steve.
Sorry, I was troubled there by that fly again and the neighbour's dogs. Apologies for those in the background. It's dogs barking in the background.
Me too, a few midgets.
Yeah. I think, Chris, again, we net zero emissions and environmental credentials and all of these buzzwords or phrases or intentions all sound very, 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 very good. In fact, I saw yesterday there was an order placed. I can't remember, one of the American carriers, one of the regional carriers, had placed an order for some electric air taxis. This is all getting very interesting. That said, it doesn't take away from the fact that aviation as a whole, as an industry, is already one of the cleanest and leanest when it comes to its environmental credentials. And I think it's all very well being environmentally friendly, Chris, but to what extent or to what price? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't get better. We absolutely should get better, but there are far greater polluters out there that seem to get away with a lot more than they get away with aviation. Aviation seems to be the easy kind of whipping boy. We are used as that quite often, and I think that is rather unfair. So I think as long as people are moving at the same pace and there is some level of equilibrium, across all industries, then I think that's absolutely fine. But whilst you're trying to get you're pushing airlines or aviation, aerospace manufacturers hard. And yet, at the same time, Australia are digging new mines, or China's firing up new coal-fired power stations. I think that's slightly disingenuous for the world to say that we're united in environmental. We clearly are not.
Yeah, no, I agree, and this is something that we covered in a podcast with regards to problems of vaccines and things. And I think if people are going to take it as seriously as obviously it has to be taken eventually, that there needs to be certain guidelines and certain criteria that everybody applies, and that obviously I know that's the objective at the moment, but without being allowed to then do other things or to get foreign aid or whatever it may be, there's got to be some rules to the game. And I also think, Steve, and I know what your points are on, is why aren't we better at PR and communicating just how good our industry does, and focus on other areas that are then more advantageous to the way we travel, the speed, all the little things that we both get frustrated about when we see them. Why don't we promote ourselves and an industry better?
Well, I almost sorry, it's like Frank Spencer moment there as a chair disappeared behind me. That was slightly troublesome. I remember Frank Spencer with his like into the attic. Do you remember he was in the And of course the plasterboard had given way, and his legs are dangling through the roof. So it would have been a reverse Frank Spencer for me. Sorry, Chris, you'll have to repeat the question around the comms communication.
Right,
was it just why do you think we're not very good at it?
Yeah, basically, look, what you're saying, and now with this last 15 months, the spotlight has been on our industry, and especially in cargo. But we still, apart from some very, very professional journalists that we've got in the industry, we still don't seem to be able to get out the right messages and some of the truths and some of the facts and figures. Why aren't we better at our own public relations and our own media within the industry?
Well, you see, I think also, just as I mentioned there, Chris, we aviation, there are a couple of things to me. One is that we are, an industry that everybody sort of loves to know a little about. When passengers are traveling, it's quite a curious experience quite often. And that sort of generates some thought, it generates some interest. Also, when things go wrong, people are very quick to bash airlines or bash the airport or bash the ground handlers or whatever. But they don't truly understand why their things have gone wrong. Maybe we're not very good at telling them why they've gone wrong. This is not just like a jump in your car and start the engine and off you go. There's a slightly more complicated chain of processes and events to get you from destination or from point A to destination point B. And so actually what I do think is when we do communicate and I do some of these fly on the wall type stuff that you and I spoke about before, Chris, fly on the wall documentaries, whether it's airport or airline or it's, I was watching Inside Turkish Airlines on Nat Geo this week, which is quite interesting. I always remember those sort of shows for being really quite. They get a few things wrong, but on the whole, they do serve a very kind of as a very interesting sort of lens into our business. So I think those are really good. On the flip side, I think we are aviation is complex. It's not sort of a black art or dark science as some people want to proclaim, to keep the new guard out. The old guard, oh, you will never understand this, son. Oh, it's very complex. This. It's not at all, but all these things are learned and people build experience and skills through it. So I think what we've got to do actually is be a little bit better at sort of some of the knowledge transfer, the skills transfer that in turn educates people, and we can therefore communicate better when it comes to people that don't work inside our business, understanding a little bit more about what we do. I mean, even just the day in the life of a shipment, Chris.
Oh, Stephen, that's music to my ears, son. Yeah.
Well, you think about it. When I click here on my Amazon, and the parcel arrives tomorrow. Well, it won't because I'm in Spain now, but it arrives in 3, 4, 5 days. But if I was in London, I could do that at 10 o'clock in the morning. It'd be in my house at 7 o'clock at night, which is phenomenal. But for that to happen, there's a massive chain of events, but nobody on the end of the telephone, Chris, will understand what those events are.
Exactly, Steve. And it's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's what should be, I think whenever, when people are waiting in airports, whether they're in bars or just sitting around, instead of just being on the phone and checking things, what a great opportunity with a captive audience to help and show them how interesting that particular industry is that they're going to experience.
Exactly.
Only a
day in the life of a bag. I mean, imagine the touch points that a bag goes through. If you're leaving, Milwaukee and you're traveling to, La Rochelle.
Yeah.
You probably pass through 2 domestic ports in the US. You then probably pass through London or Paris. The bag, it has its own little journey separate to the customer. By the time that bag arrives on the belt in La Rochelle, oh, that's great, thanks so much. Nobody thinks twice about it.
Yep.
But actually, the number of events and the number of people, the number of systems, the number of comms and messaging and everything that was required to do that actually is quite extraordinary.
Yep. No, I agree,
Steve.
Steve.
All they know about is when the bag does not arrive on the belt, and one of those events failed. As happened to me recently, flying simply from Madrid to Palma, and the bag didn't turn up. I mean, that's quite a. I always, I'm quite forgiven when there are interline and connectivity and overseas ports and multiple airlines involved. But when you fly with one airline, Air Europa, and you leave Madrid and you arrive in Palma, and you haven't, it's a very simple one leg, and the bag doesn't get there. That is quite frustrating. So that's what people will then remember about the bag. Oh, bloody Air Europa bag didn't pitch up. But actually, all of these systems need to be in place to make this work. So I think if we use some of that, Chris, and some of what does happen to deliver the product to the customer, whether it be a shipment, the Amazon shipment, whether it's their bag, some of those messaging would be quite good. So maybe that's something you should take up in your pastimes, penning some creative thoughts around storyboards for that.
Yes, indeed, mate. Yes, indeed. Now, talk about interesting storyboards, and also something that I know you're going to have a little snigger at, and probably people who know us both as well. Here's a nice heading. Airlines could start forcing passengers to step on the scale before flights after the FAA imposes new weight rules for planes. So new regulations mean airlines must establish a method of determining passenger weight. It's an implicit acknowledgement that the average American is getting heavier. Depending on the airline, takeoff location and plane size, it could result in some passengers getting bumped from flights or baggage left behind. Airlines must submit their plans to the FAA for approval by June 12. Some have already done so and come up with updated passenger weight estimates. And everything from clothing to carried items must be taken into account. Now, how complex are they going to try and make that? And this reminds me of a story, Steve, where I went on a skiing trip with quite a few lads, many of them you know. And we went into this lovely little family ski lodge, and everybody was getting their gear ready. And anyhow, the guy said to me, he said, right, he said, we'll do your skis now, sir. He says, will you step on the scale? I stepped to the scale. And he said, oh, my goodness, in a lovely Austrian accent. And he said, you're the second heaviest person we've had in here all season. To which everybody in the shop burst out laughing. So can you imagine what's going to happen if they're looking at
did your right arm recoil at the time that he said that?
No, it's one of those things that catches you and you think, oh, blimey, yep. But nonetheless, I never ever, when I'm in the company of those guys, go without one of them bringing it up. So, but can you imagine it now?
Yeah, look, I hadn't heard about that, Chris. But look, I think it's really interesting because we already have a process in place. We do weight surveys. The regulators require that airlines do weight surveys.
Yeah, so, average weight bag and person. Yeah,
and these will happen on they don't happen in schedule season, but they might happen once every 3, 4, 5 years, where the regulator will ask the airline or the AOC holder, to validate and verify their notional weights that they're used for weight and balance. So that's a bit odd that the FAA have changed. I'm not sure if it's a headline that's gone wrong or actually if there is something that's there. However, what I would say, Chris, is it's very common when I've been in places like the Maldives or the Scottish Isles, two very different
yes.
But if you're on a Twin Otter or or an Islander or a Trilander, etc., you are weighed before the flight because the aircraft are very sensitive to weight and balance. So that already happens in some of these markets for very specific reasons. Could I ever see a plane, a 777 load of large Americans who are typically larger than they should be, for the most part? Well, says me, who's carrying a few extra pounds as well. But the world is getting fatter, so maybe this is good encouragement for us to get a bit better control of our weights. But could I see a full plane load? of 300 punters on a 777 getting weighed before a flight. No, I can't. Would you like to see it for a weight survey? Yeah, I'm sure we probably do already.
But it's not. It's Steve. The thing that comes to my mind is when people say about cargo and ready for carriage, and they're always talking about you've got to do 100%. Nobody does 100%, but you need a balance of certain spot checking, and certain plan checking, and then also having people who are on the dock who have got experience to know what certain things weigh and what they should be according to dimensions, etc. So if you applied that and you had some people on check-in who said, well, I'm sorry, sir, can you step over here? Or madam, I'm sorry, we have to weigh you. I think, oh my goodness me, that's going to cause some issues. But what they're saying is that from since 2005, when the last airlines were asked to update their passenger weight estimates, according to the data, people are 5% heavier than then. But I can't see that.
Well, we've all got fat, and we shouldn't. We should all be working harder to get slimmer.
Yeah, no, it's terrible, isn't it? Now, Steve,
he said at 12 pints. Can you feel it here?
You don't have to tell me how heavy I feel this morning, mate. Yeah, no, definitely not. Now, another issue, Steve. Okay, so obviously with this, the messages now and this third wave as such, but that's going to cost. It's going to cost the industry, especially in the UK now, billions again this summer.
Another lost summer. Can you believe it?
And the thing is, with every lost summer, you get a very challenging winter, and it's just really, really, really now getting to a point where, how can things actually speed up? When all these, I just think some of the decisions that need to be made quicker aren't, and then the decisions that are made quite quickly thereafter shouldn't have had to be done as quickly as they were.
Well, as you saw, because I sent it to you, there's a very good intervention by Theresa May this week.
Yes.
And it was she was very, very much in support of the industry. She was very critical of the government's support for aviation, or lack of. She was very disappointed around the way that the green list had been handled.
Yeah.
She was certainly very pointed in her thoughts, or her description of the Portuguese opening just simply being used to allow the FA Cup. Sorry, not the FA Cup. that would have been a bit odd. The Champions League final to be played in Porto, and as soon as that was over and done and dusted, Portugal went back. So there's some odd. I'm not suggesting there's anything to it, but it wouldn't surprise me, Chris, if the government had supported that. And I think everything that she had said was actually very fair, was very balanced. She's not somebody that sort of sits there and is very, sort of aggravated towards the government. She knows how this works, and she knows how governments are challenged by public opinion, and also industry input. I think what it means for me really is, I think there isn't really a clear strategy. There has never been a clear strategy. Since April last year, the British government were telling us that the aviation was a very important industry. It would be handled very, very sensitively. It would get. I remember Mr. Sunak saying aviation will get all of the support this government. And that, of course, hasn't happened at all. I think very, very fair to say, and I know we sort of commented, I mean, whilst throwing bricks on the back benches is far easier than being the PM on the front bench. I accept that, and that's a fair comment you made yesterday, Chris, over our afternoon tea party. But what I do think is that this sort of flip-flopping and lack of clarity really is causing all these problems. I think also, if most of the adult population is now vaccinated,
yeah,
and that's certainly the case here in Mallorca, who've been going gangbusters with their vaccine program as well. And the UK population is majority vaccinated. We were first told that the lockdown was for public health, to protect public health institutions being overcrowded. That clearly is now the case. There is no overcrowding. I think at yesterday's count, there was 120 people hospitalized in London with COVID. So clearly there is no issue with hospitalization. The second thing we were told, it was to, protect the spread of the virus, or protect it. But now that we've got everybody vaccinated, clearly to some way, shape or form, we've got some level of controls around that. And so I think if those things are the case, and we have made these massive leaps forward, why are we still seeing discussions today about potential extensions of lockdowns, or extension of restrictions, in late in the year? I just don't buy it anymore in terms of the strategic approach. And therefore, I think our industry, Chris, where it's perfectly safe to get on a flight to Spain, perfectly safe. Everybody wears masks. You live in Spain as well. There, look, we all know that you cannot walk down the street here without your mask on.
Yes, no, and that's something that other countries need to take in hand.
You'll get criticism from your fellow locals because they're quite keen to see people complying, or you'll get a little nudge from the Policía Local, who will rather get nudged than Seville, of course, but a little nudge from the Policía Local to encourage you to conform. Spain is a very compliant nation. It has been so, and therefore to stop airlines being able to offer a summer here again when caseloads are below or same as UK, to me seems just frankly bizarre.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. And it's really good now that the three big global airline alliances are all getting together, and they're standing now firm, because obviously for them it's a huge thing, and what they're saying is globally you're looking at almost 200 million jobs at risk, and then you're looking at other areas where it's 80% of tourism has dropped since 2019. It's a huge hit. But the points I think that you've made several times, but what they're saying as well is that simplicity is needed, and common sense is now something that's desperately required. But what they're saying is that the simple measures are that fully vaccinated passengers should be exempt from quarantine. Why do they have to quarantine? COVID-19 testing should be a lot more accessible and affordable and consistent. And connecting passengers at airports should not be subject to additional testing or quarantine restrictions at the point of transfer if they remain in the transit zone. So if people get their acts together at the major hubs, then there shouldn't be a problem there either. And vaccination will have a key role in the restart. So, everybody now should be pushed, whether it be celebrities, whether it be politicians, whether it be religious heads, whatever it is, to say, look, the one thing that is actually halting and stopping and preventing, this from spreading is the double vaccinations. The single ones are a help, but it's those that get double, and it's the double that really, really matters.
Yeah, I just, I think people that choose not to get vaccinated, quite frankly, are a liability.
Yeah. And then, Steve, you look in the States, and the numbers are flying up. There was a point there where TSA were offering bonuses and overtime to keep airport checkpoints moving, and because of the surge in passengers again.
But talking of the USA, I mean, I see that that Biden and Johnson have struck a deal to create a task force to reopen transatlantic travel.
Yeah, a task force.
A bloody task force for?
Yeah.
Just go, boys. I mean, what are you doing? You dithering old fool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, crazy. Now, what about the crowds? I've got to say, and I can't say it strongly enough, how well it is organised when you land in Spain, either domestically or internationally. They are polite. Customs, the police, they're really, I mean, genuinely best I've ever seen for years. And then when you come through, the medical staff are so professional, and the way the system works, I think it's absolutely, it's really impressive, and it's superb.
I have to agree. I mean, when you arrive back into the UK, it's like a bloody melee. I mean, this melee of just chaos. Chaos reigns. I mean, I'm really not sure why it's that difficult. In Spain, they've had this in place since middle of last year.
Yes.
It works a treat. I mean, it
yes.
simply works a treat. And so you can criticize, other nations all you like, but people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So we are, we're supposed to be, seen as one of the 7 foremost industrialized nations in the world, according to the G7 propaganda that they pump out, and we can't get our shit together.
Yeah,
I mean, phenomenal. The US is fairly relaxed from what I understand. Of course, I've not been to the US. I've got no desire to go either. But from what I understand, people that have been traveling there, it's fairly organized when you enter into the US. But of course, they have a very large domestic market where all these restrictions are not in place, and therefore
exactly.
The air travel industry recover, of course, much greater than you have where, I think the Schengen area or Schengen, let's call it Schengen plus, because sort of Ireland and the UK, Switzerland, who are not Schengen members, but the European continent, if you like, generally functions as a domestic area, although there are international borders. Schengen has removed some of the documentation and immigration controls across the Schengen member states, but even the hangers-on, like the UK and Ireland, who are non-Schengen, you don't think really flying from London to Spain is an international flight. That, for me, it just seems it's a domestic, almost a domestic trip. I mean, I know officially it's not, but it feels like that. Certainly, if you're flying from Germany to Spain, where it is Schengen, and you can travel on your ID card, and you don't need a passport, that is very much a domestic or akin to a domestic flight. The problem we had is the Schengen area is still trying to function without its borders, if you like, interstate. Yeah, but then, of course, nationalism came up, and health protection measures were put in place, and therefore borders came up. Well, Schengen was never designed to have borders in this kind of way. So, of course, you've seen countries like Spain and Portugal put their head on the Belgian chopping board, waiting for Mrs. Merkel or Monsieur Macron to bash them down again. The minute they want to do something different from the rest, they're kicked back into touch.
Yeah,
and I think they're unfortunate, because this market has functioned, like a domestic market, as I say, and now has not been able to prosper using that. That said, the inter-Schengen travel, if I see looking over the house here, near the airport, relatively so, all EasyJet, Ryanair flights, German wings, it's quite like the of this armada, of an invasion, where there's a lot of inter-Schengen travel. There's a lot of Germans, there's lots of Dutch, there's lots of Swiss, who are all traveling. But of course, that doesn't extend to little old UK, because of those quarantine restrictions and this nonsense green, amber, red. I mean, as somebody said the other day, just make it green or red. It's very simple. What the hell is amber? Either you don't have to quarantine, or you do. Yeah. I mean, why do we need to make things more complicated than they already are? So yeah. I mean, Johan Lundgren and Sean Doyle and Michael O'Leary and Joseph Varady have all been very outspoken this week on this. So I think those are much better industry commentators than me. But I wouldn't say yourself, Chris, of course. But for me, so I think I'll defer to their.
I'll wait for the weighing scales, mate. Yeah, no, but I agree, Steve. But with everybody's talking about facts and data now and stuff. But the double vaccinations are making a difference. So why not allow that? That's what I don't understand.
Well, it's peculiar. It's a peculiarity.
Yeah, and here's another point for you. Talking about more regional, or well, I shouldn't say regional, because they're the biggest non-London operator now, but Loganair. So they've now just recently introduced a carbon charge to fares. Okay, so it's not huge, it's only £1, but it's a carbon offset charge. And what they're saying is that they're happy to be the first to introduce an overt environmental levy, whereby others are hiding it within fares or making it optional, but they're actually charging now a £1 fee. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a good thing, bad thing? To be more open about green skies and letting people say, okay, if that's what we have to do, then we'll contribute to it. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a matter for Loganair, really, and Loganair's customers to decide whether they want to support it. Personally, I don't support carbon offset in the way that sort of they've been historically used as optionally sort of opt-ins. I support environmental credentials, and I'm very much a naturist, Chris, a naturist, not a naturalist.
I know, yeah. But yeah,
very
well
much
done for clarifying that, because we've had a few mishaps last week.
And I love wildlife and I love spending time in the country. So I'm up there flying the flag for the environment and our beautiful wildlife. What I would say, however, with many of these schemes, you don't know where that money is going, and quite they all will plant a tree. It goes to a plant a tree fund. Well, I'm not really sure that just planting a tree is sufficient. I'm not sure that is really something that that will have a material effect or material change. Obviously, the trees are very helpful. We wouldn't live without them. They generate oxygen and all sorts of good things. I mean, that's really helpful for all of us. But I don't think that is just sort of it seems to me a bit of a token gesture. So as long as Loganair can sort of have the conviction and can stand by with that conviction to sort of commit to the destination for those funds and be sure what it's doing, and if it makes them, Jonathan Hinkles and his team sleep better at night, then that is a very good thing.
Yeah. No, I know it's a personal matter, and the thing that you brought there is people are saying what they're doing and what they're doing. Okay, yeah, of course it makes sense, but is it really having the impact?
That's my feeling. Yeah. We're still in this.
To understand more.
We're still in this blasted EU emissions trading scheme as well.
Yeah.
This is a noose around our neck, because actually, whilst you're in such a trading scheme, which a lot of countries are vehemently against. So of course it's a state level thing. It's not about the industry. It's the states that are responsible for this. Because the US was heavily against the EU ETS, of course. So I think there's these nooses that we've got to get rid of to actually be able to move forward in a meaningful way that has material effect and long-lasting creation of sustainable sustainability and sustainable outcomes for the environment and for the industry. And of course, as we all know, it's far more. If you want to do nothing, i.e., you want to fly, don't fly. I mean, that is the best thing that we could all do. Let's just ground all the airplanes. There we go. But actually, when we contribute so little to the overall carbon emissions as an industry, I think it's less than 3% or something? Is it? Chris. It seems peculiar to me that we would take such draconian action. So we have to get the balance right. If you price people out of the market, well, they'll just find alternative ways. And I'm not sure that's all getting in our cars is a good thing for domestic travel. It's got to be done holistically and in coordination with other transport networks. It's quite difficult for me to take a train or drive from Mallorca to the UK, but easy if I was in Barcelona to take the train to Madrid. You understand? So when I'm in London, if I want to go to Paris, I absolutely do not use an airplane. I get on the Eurostar. Far more civil travel in any case. My recent trip to Scotland, I took the train from London to Edinburgh. Again, a very civilized way to travel and actually get a lot of work. But of course, there are journeys that we cannot do that. So you've got to get the balance right. And as Boris called them the other day, the tree huggers.
Yes.
Need to be careful not to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yep, good old BJ. And it's good that John Batten's now got a competitor for his two-digit reference. Yeah. So another thing, Steve. Lots of people are talking about all of the crisis that we've been through, but the one that reminds me now, when everybody was talking back in 2010 about the volcanic, the ash cloud, which brought the aviation in Northern Europe to a standstill for, I think it was almost a week, just under a week. But when you look back now and you see some of the things that have happened in our industry, I mean, they just get bigger and worse as each one rolls out, but we always do bounce back. Now, on that bounce back, now they're talking about some time in 24, maybe 25. just as a little sweepstake here now, when do you reckon things will be back? So I'll be able to put this down. I'll make a T-shirt with the date on it so I can wear it on that time to see if you were right. When do you reckon?
Oh, yeah, difficult, Chris. I think we've seen a much, slower, for all the reasons that we just mentioned around some of the government restrictions and quarantine and so on. We've seen a much slower recovery than we would have expected. I think for that reason that we won't see much of a 2021 summer. You already pointed out that sort of drags through, the effect of that drags through into the winter schedule. However, I'm slightly more optimistic, Chris, that when travel is opened, and when I say, we are back to management of borders and all this sort of jazz. It, like that elastic band, I think it's getting pulled and pulled, and the tension in the band is getting greater and greater and greater until the point that it's released. And I think there will therefore be a significantly greater demand for capacity summer 2022 than we would have ordinarily seen had we sort of recovered a little bit more incrementally this year. So that's a good thing. So I suspect that 2023, sort of late 23 into early 24, spring 24 would be my prediction.
Yeah, very good. Well, we're in line, so we'll have to get a T-shirt with the same on the front and the back. And the other thing that I think as well is, I don't know about you, but I am getting Zoom fatigue and meetings fatigue. It was great, and it is effective, and it can be a balanced combination in the future. But the sooner you get into workshop environments or face-to-face meetings, and I think people are going to relish that, and I think that's going to come back as well.
Was that just on the basis of a productive day yesterday, Chris?
No, not just because of that, but there's certain things that you can get a feel for, you can see, you can get an energy from that you can't on a screen.
Yesterday's a great example. That's the first workshop that a client workshop that you and I have had with a client for 15 months, 16 months.
Yeah.
And I felt that we achieved much more. Yes, this is just a very personal example, my very personal. I felt for us to have achieved the same as we did yesterday in 6 hours or 7 hours, or after the evening session went on for slightly longer. But, from the formal session, I felt that we achieved much more, Chris, in those 6 hours than that would have taken us 2 or 3 weeks to do iteratively and drop feeding things through the system and, through the, because you can't just have a 6 hour Zoom call. That function. So
yes, and you can't refer to certain documents, and you can't and you can't map out very simple visuals. It's a lot different
language necessarily either, when sort of we're going down a rabbit hole or a path that might not be welcome, or conversely, when people like me get rather excited by what is being discussed. So look, I'm a bit of an extrovert, with no surprise for you or our listeners to know, and therefore us extroverts, we need people around us, but I think we all need people around us, particularly at times it's been difficult for people this year or this past 12 months. But I certainly think that and we're seeing already some evidence of it. People going back to the office. I was talking to some colleagues in London last week that'd seen men in suits popping into the pub and things, and this was great. That sort of people were starting to go back. We've seen Apple already saying you lot ain't working from home. You work shy millennials. You're going to get your ass back into the office ASAP. And they're banning working from home. I think this is really good stuff. I think it's really good stuff. I'm not a fan particularly of working from home. I like to be with the clients. I like to be where the action is. I like to smell the kerosene and the jet fuel, and I like to be in the thick of it. To coin it.
No, and I'm the same, Steve. But I do think there is a good balance, and for a lot of people, it's going to make a huge difference because of reduced commuting and where they have to live, where they can choose to live. Life work balance. So I think it's going to be a nice consolidated mixed bag in the future, but definitely to be getting in front of people is important. Now, something we did touch on yesterday, which I think we should think about for next week's show, is the problems with having the right skills for the pressures that are going to come when the bounce back actually does return. And also, how do you turn on? How do you turn off? you know, it's a dilemma now that's going to be affecting all parts of the business. So I think next week, all about how do you protect skills, upskill, new skill, cross skill, but how do you make sure you've got the right volumes of people necessary to deal with the pressures as it comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give
Yeah.
that some and come up with a few hypotheses for next week.
Good on you. And listen, it was absolutely lovely to see you over the last couple of days, and more of it, please God.
It was great.
Crossed.
It was great. Yeah. It was really good fun. And yeah, as always, Chris, thanks for making the effort. It was really, really, really worthwhile. I enjoyed it. It was 2 days well spent.
Yeah, I agree.
Fire for the rest of the day and lie on my sofa, I think.
Yes. Well, yeah. I must admit, I feel a little bit heavy everywhere at the moment, so I wouldn't be one to be tried out for the new weights for the flights.
That's not just left thigh from the scale, is it?
Yeah, exactly. All right, my friend. But listen, it's a lovely blue sky there. Looks well, and now I know exactly where you are. So
Exactly.
having sat there yesterday, yeah. Take care, lovely boy.
Cheers.
Take care of yourself, and we'll speak soon.
Bye-bye.